My Walmart's flag is at half mast today. That's crazy. I mean, look. Tragedy aside, if you're like a black person, if you have loved ones who are undocumented, if you're a brown person, if you are a trans person or you know trans people, like, oh, because it's 9/11. Oh, Jesus. That's why, right? Okay, I was ready to pop off. But Trump is no. Hold on though. Hold on, because this is still a larger a larger thing, because the president ordered flags to be at half mast, not because of 9/11, but because of Charlie Kirk. I can't believe we forgot. No, I just like Trump ordered it until Sunday, and it was openly not about 9/11 at all. He said it was for Charlie Kirk. He extended it for Charlie Kirk. And no, I didn't forget that it's 9/11 today. I already started the conversation, started today by addressing it. Anyway, my point is, if you're any of these marginalized groups that have been like actively dehumanized by Charlie Kirk, or like the right wing broadly, and you see a lot of like institutional liberals currently talking about like lowering the temperature aside, like just genuinely talking about the background of Charlie Kirk and like who he was and what he meant to so many Americans, all this stuff, like, you got to feel a little worried, right? You got to feel a little worried that like there are just these people just like don't give a shit about you at all. Because like my expectation isn't for Ezra Klein to come out and be like, R.I.P. Bozo, smoking on that Charlie Kirk pack or some shit, right? Like that's not my expectation at all. That would be insane, right? And of course, if you're in a position of prominence, you shouldn't do that anyway, right? Because you do have some influence. But the point I'm making is that like when you go above and beyond to almost like whitewash their perspective and their political output, when this is a political operative, you kind of come across as you're either signing off on their worldview, right? Or you just don't care, right? Like you either are saying, I like what he was doing, I like what his worldview looks like, or I don't care enough about the dehumanization that he partook in, right? This has got to be, this has got to be a weird moment for a lot of people. I'm in this. I'm too close to the situation for me to look at it as anything but there has definitely been a when I saw the eulogies coming from CNN and Fox News and how close they were in the language and the verbiage used, like it kind of frustrated me a little bit. Like, you're supposed to be clear. You're supposed to be honest. There's no reason to be dishonest. And I even tweeted about this earlier as well, and people were obviously screaming bloody murder in my replies in the aftermath of this. But like, I tweeted two things. I said, shameful from the New York Times obit of Charlie Kirk, said Julia Steinberg. Mr. Kirk was so vocal in his willingness to spread unsupported claims and outright lies. He said that drug hydroxychloroquine was 100% effective in treating the virus, which is not. That Twitter temporarily barred him in early March 2020, but the move only added to his notoriety and seemed to support his claim that he was muzzled by a liberal elite. Now, what's interesting about this is like that's the least offensive thing Charlie Kirk had said, right? Like in terms of distasteful things, in terms of like objectively violent statements and dehumanizing rhetoric, like that's the least offensive thing, right? And I said, this is all but a fraction of Charlie Kirk's honest perspective. He was quite proud of his positions. He defended them vociferously. Not sure why you'd find them distasteful to mention. Can't you paint any person in a bad light? You absolutely can. You absolutely can. But my expectation in this moment is for people to be sober in their analysis and be honest in their analysis, right? Like my expectation is not for the New York Times to be like, he deserved it or whatever. Obviously, I don't believe that either. But my expectation is for them to, at the very least, reflect a little bit about his positions, because this is the moment where you are. This is the moment where you are introducing Charlie Kirk to a much broader audience. Like, reflect on his real legacy. And Matt Walsh said some stuff as well. He said, All Charlie Kirk ever did was have conversations with people. He didn't insult anyone. He made arguments. He debated. He wasn't an extremist in any way. Everyone who knew Charlie personally loved him. That's the kind of guy he was. They still killed him. I'm furious and heartbroken in equal measure. I cannot put into words how I feel. Maybe that is for the best. To which I responded with, Charlie Kirk opposed the Civil Rights Act, called George Floyd a scumbag, said he'd be worried about black pilots, and that he forced his daughter to carry a pregnancy to term if she was raped. He shouldn't have been killed, but he was definitely an extremist. Like, the problem is, Matt Walsh doesn't think Charlie Kirk's an extremist. And the problem is, most Republicans don't think these positions are extreme positions. Okay? So in a moment like this, when tensions are very high, for mainstream institutions to also launder his reputation or his output and rewrite his legacy after years and years of reflecting on it, after years and years of honest coverage about what he had said, down to the wire, down to the very last moment, I think is disappointing. This is crazy. You think this? You think it's crazy that I think that someone saying that their daughter, if they were raped, in a hypothetical, their daughter, if they were raped, that you would force them to carry a pregnancy to term is not an extreme position? Go ahead. Have that argument with anyone around the country. There are a lot less people who would agree with that position than there are people who would be repulsed by said position. He has a 10-year-old daughter. Yeah. I can't link Osita Nwanevu's blue sky take for you, but he said, and he is totally correct, and that's what my frustrations are a little bit as well. My sense is that most Americans had not heard of Charlie Kirk until yesterday. The first and perhaps only thing they're going to hear about him from the most trusted and important voices in American politics is that he was a model and constructive participant in good faith political discourse. That's crazy, because when you stake your reputation on a statement such as that one, you're signing off on all of this. You're signing off on all of this, and you're turning around and you're saying to the people that are listening to you that those are a part of the honest political discourse. You can say that this is a tragedy, that this is supposed to have no place. This is supposed to have no place in any country's political discourse. Like, it's true. It's true. That's why we live in a civilization, okay? You don't have to demonstrate empathy for someone who does not have empathy for you, but you can still look at the situation and reflect on it and realize that this is a dangerous, unstable environment, okay? An environment that absolutely requires legislative solutions. Look, the State Department indicated it would review the legal status of immigrants praising, rationalizing, or making light of Charlie Kirk's fatal shooting. What are we doing? But yes, Osita's take is correct on this. He covered Ezra Klein's New York Times article on this. He said, "This is frankly incredible to me. Would Klein have said Charlie Kirk of Turning Point USA was practicing politics in exactly the right way this time last week? Exactly the right way? Really? Would that have been a broadly accepted characterization of left of center? You can dislike much of what Kirk believed in the following statement. It's still true. Kirk was practicing politics in exactly the right way. He was showing up to campuses and talking with anyone who would still talk to him. He was one of the era's most effective practitioners of persuasion. When the left thought its hold on the hearts and minds of college students was nearly absolute, Kirk showed up again and again to break it. Slowly then, all at once, he did. College-age voters shifted sharply right in the 2024 election. This did not happen because of Charlie Kirk. This happened because of the anger and resentment that people had towards the administration that was in charge leading up to the election, and their inability to address their economic anxieties. Okay? That's it. That's it. Charlie Kirk was an accelerant, certainly, but yeah, you can take him out. You can take her out. But to make this false notion that he was like single-handedly responsible for this betrays the reality that is unfolding in front of us in real time. If Charlie Kirk was singularly responsible for the Gen Z turn towards Trump, and it wasn't more a systemic shift born out of, okay, guys, please be quiet. 1 second. Thank you. You can't hear them, but I can. There's a lot of commotion in my house right now. So, where was I? What the fuck was I saying? Oh, if this wasn't a systemic shift with younger people responding. If this wasn't a systemic shift, with younger people responding to the existing administration at the time, the Biden administration, and their inability to address some of these economic pressures that they were experiencing, and them falsely assuming that Trump would present an alternative vision that would be better potentially. If you think that it was something beyond that, Charlie Kirk, until yesterday, was still very much an operator in the field. He was still going to college campuses. So why did that Gen Z swing back happen already? Because in the first 9 months of Trump's administration, Gen Z swung wildly back towards an antagonistic position against Donald Trump. This is not only a bad political assessment, but it's also a dangerous one. Exactly. This isn't to say that Charlie Kirk wasn't impactful. Of course he was, for sure. But he was taking advantage of the systemic forces, the systemic shift that was happening broadly, because he was still very much right there. He was very much still in operation, and yet the Gen Z attitude swung directly back in the opposite direction and became antagonistic to Donald Trump. This is inconsistent. This is bad analysis, and it is inconsistent with reality. It is inconsistent with the New York Times Siena polls that just came out this past week, reflecting on Gen Z attitude that is antagonistic to Trump now. Anyway, and it's also incorrect in terms of like, this is broad persuasion, or these people are actually using the field of debate to arrive at a truth. Like, everybody knows that this is content. You're cutting content and you're doing propaganda. Okay? There is a reason why Charlie would pick the targets that he picked. And it's not Charlie who started this process. It's not Charlie Kirk who was responsible for, the college campus debate field. Ben Shapiro did it all the time as he elevated his status as well, taking a bunch of hysterical college campus freshmen who have never been in front of a microphone, in front of a large audience, and like ritualistically humiliating them so you can make SJW-owned compilations, is not actually arriving at the truth, arriving at any sort of serious truth through testing your ideas in the field of battle. It's just propaganda. Shapiro did it. Steven Crowder did it. Also, very famously, the whole "change my mind," that was Steven Crowder, right? So the assessment here of the assessment here of debate and why Charlie Kirk was doing these debates is also false. Is also built around a falsehood. When the left thought its hold in hard, slowly, then all at once he did. College-age voters shifted rapidly. That was not all Kirk's doing, but he was central in laying the groundwork for it. That is fair. He says that's not all Kirk's doing. I did not know Kirk, and I am not the right person to eulogize him, but I envied what he built. A taste for disagreement is a virtue in a democracy. Liberalism could use more of his moxie and fearlessness. In the inaugural episode of his podcast, Governor Gavin Newsom of California hosted Kirk, admitting that his son was a huge fan. What a testament to Kirk's project. Osita continues. He says, Charlie Kirk was not engaged in respectful political debate. Charlie Kirk condemns Zohran Mamdani for how he disgustingly eats rice. We in the West value cleanliness. We have utensils. Charlie Kirk says, it doesn't feel right for London and New York City to have Muslim mayors. This is not respectful debate. It's just not. It's just pure racism being intellectualized and then being washed over by an intellectual giant such as Ezra Klein amongst the liberal intelligentsia, of course. Ezra Klein is a revered figure, is a respected figure by liberals. He has a prominent spot at the New York Times, and he's using that prominent spot to basically wash over a whole bunch of completely racialized screeds as though this was a reasonable disagreement that people had. Make no mistake, however, this is like the solution to this is not fucking gun violence. Obviously, that is insane. Okay? The difference, of course, here is that, yes, as someone also brought this up, if he said this about Jews, Ezra would not have this opinion of him, And that's also true. As someone who can tonally be incendiary, I think there's a role for incendiary in politics. And I am certainly not a stranger to an incendiary tone myself, as you guys know. I have some of my highlights and lowlights. It's filled to the brim with incendiary statements, okay? And yes, Charlie Kirk has said anti-Semitic shit as well. It doesn't matter. He's super pro-Israel. And for a lot of these guys, it doesn't matter if you say stuff like that about Jews, okay? Calm down. as long as you're pro-Israel. And Charlie Kirk certainly was unimaginably pro-Israel. And I have an assessment about all this. I have an assessment about all the other conspiracy theories that are running around as well. Okay? Just stop posting your RP bozo shit. There's already a Canary Mission style Charlie Kirk Death Celebrators website up and has doxed over 10,000 people so far. No matter how you feel, have some self-preservation, please. It's not worth it to say the same dumb shit others have already said. Exactly. Like, you need to have a little bit of messaging discipline and operate from a position of self-preservation. You think you have anonymity online? You do not. You do not. These guys are literally out for blood. They're looking for anything and everything they can get out of the situation. While everybody understands that, like, I did not engage in any sort of celebration whatsoever, and even told people not to do so for self-preservation purposes, especially. There are still people who are upset with my analysis on, like, Alex Jones. Like, they're looking for anything that they can hold on to say, like, you are not sufficiently sad about this. You understand? They're using anything and everything they can under the sun to try and punish their ideological enemies. Anyway, as Osita says, as someone who can be tonally incendiary, I think there's a role for incendiary in politics. My problem with Kirk wasn't his tone, but the content of what he said, which I believe was immoral. All that aside, I wonder how readily mainstream voices would canonize a dead leftist speaking in this register as having engaged in respectful debate. Of course not. Of course not. If the equivalent of Charlie Kirk on the opposing side is someone like myself, if I were to be assassinated under gruesome circumstances similar to Charlie Kirk, they would be celebrating it. They would literally be advocating to release the shooter if he were ever apprehended to begin with. They would call him a hero. They would say, we need more of that. We need more. We need more of this kind of death. Let's be real. Of course, if the right-wing pundits goading listeners towards violence, as Kirk himself did, get their way, we might find out soon enough. Exactly. The New York Times comment section is the best moderate publication in America. He was a traveling salesman, not interested in debate or listening to ideas, but performative showmanship. The spewing of vitriolic hate towards outgroups disguised in the rhetoric of conversations is nothing to be commended. This is true. This is going to get so out of context. What are you talking about? So you make it sound if there's a massive witch hunt going on in America. Chatter, are you around? Are you alive? Is your brain functioning? Have you not seen this? Did you not listen to Donald Trump's own words where he said we're waging a war against the left and liberals in general, and we're going to punish them? Anyone and everyone that is responsible for this, that has ever, like, called a Republican correctly a Nazi or whatever, is liable. And this is, of course, on top of the existing witch hunt against migrants or people suspected of being migrants. How severe do you think it is what I meant. I don't know, man. I guess the severity of it is dependent on your position of privilege, your position of comfort. Like, for example, when Mahmoud Khalil was apprehended, when numerous pro-Palestinian writers and student activists were apprehended black bag and threatened with deportation, did you think that was a severe escalation and a severe violation of the First Amendment? Or do you think it was just simply, people are just, like, grossly exaggerating this? Perhaps because you don't think that this would ever impact you in a meaningful fashion. So yeah, interesting. The right way in politics to spread hateful comments against Americans you don't like, or to condone gun deaths to have the freedom to bear arms. His death was sad, but don't sugarcoat his actions. That's my assessment as well. Like to be gunned down in that way at the age of 31 is horrifying. It's a tragedy. It is. And it's unacceptable in American politics, and it's unacceptable across the board in all politics. There is a reason why we live in a society where there is a social contract that we abide by. This is ripping apart the social fabric, okay? But that social fabric has been unwound for the past multiple years of unimaginable gun violence that Americans have experienced. That social fabric has been ripped apart by all the death and destruction that we deal overseas. And that death and destruction has violent consequences here on the home front as well. The fascist boomerang, okay? And in the absence of any sort of serious considerations of how to solve some of these issues, that decentralized form of violence is only going to continue. And I think liberals, instead of taking a sober approach here and trying to engage with the structural inequities to address these issues, are simply just responding, and they're responding in the same way that Republicans are responding, by hailing Charlie Kirk as a champion, a hero, laundering his reputation, making it seem as though the way the way that they have covered this, the way that Charlie Kirk operated was actually good.
I need you all to realize
what is this?
that debate will never save us. And the reason you have all of these left debate bros crying over Charlie Kirk dying is because they were actually buddy-buddy and everything was actually just a game to them. This demonic rhetoric that actually causes harm to people of color, to minorities, to actual people, real, genuine violence and harm that is enacted through rhetoric that these people would...
I mean, I've been saying this. I've been saying that, like, realize how everyone hates Hassan Piker? Yeah, because he's not friends with any of them and they hate him for it. I'm reminded when Hassan Piker was at the DNC, Charlie tried to dab him up like they were buddies and Hassan was so confused and ignored him. It absolutely is a game to the debate bros. They do not seriously care about the issues they speak about and rhetoric or their rhetoric has on the masses. Like, none of this is to say that it's a good thing that this happened, okay? I'm not doing that, obviously. But I do think I do think that it's a disservice to the public if all of these trusted liberal institutions are engaging in the same kinds of obituaries that you hear from Sean Hannity. Kind of weird how everyone turned on you. It's not weird, man. It's not. It's just it's an expectation. A lot of people, if you believe that there is an ideological goal here, if there is a higher purpose here, then you don't give a shit about petty disagreements because it comes across as narcissistic. If you have a broader ideological goal in mind, even when others are attacking you nonstop and in increasingly more belligerent ways, what do I always say? What do I always do? I have a policy, a principle of not actively attacking those to my left flank because, one, I understand that we don't have any power in this country. Okay. And two, that these guys are ultimately on the same cause. They're directionally fighting for the same issues. Bro, you literally say you're against the death penalty and even advocate for everyone, including Nazis, to get healthcare? Of course. Of course. That's true. I've never seen this much Hassan hate over ever on Twitter until now. I mean, it's fine. It's all right. This is not new. It's just increased in its intensity. That's all this is. That's all it is.
Create and spew all over the world. And then the left guys would come in and believe that they're saving the world, doing justice. But in reality, it was all just a fucking game to them. That's why they're crying because he's gone. Because it was all a fucking game. Debate was never about...
This nerd is trying to sound scary. You had a Houthi on your live stream. Instead of calling American heroes extremists, you should return to your native Turkey before we prosecute you for material support of a designated foreign terrorist organization. Come on, man. Come on, dude. Please, you are such a pussy. Like, do you feel like a big man? You're like, hey, man, I'm going to get daddy to prosecute you. I'm going to get daddy to prosecute you. Oh, I don't like it. Assuming such an interview would be material support doubtful, Houthis were not even a foreign terrorist organization at the time of the interview. I understand tensions are high, but maybe you can stop calling for baseless criminal prosecutions of your political enemies. Okay, we got a liberal lawyer defending me. This is a former Destiny Orbiter. Liberal lawyer. It's just, like, this is... I expect this from the right, which Will Chamberlain is from the right. But what I don't like is when I see people who present themselves as, like, liberal figures. Okay? I do not expect this from people who present themselves as liberals online, you know, like Ethan Klein or the fucking losers brigade, right? Like the people who present themselves as like centrists, apolitical people. They do this exact same thing. They use the exact same language. They demand the exact same criminal prosecution. And it's like, it's ridiculous. Like, what are you Steven Crowder? Like, what the fuck are you? I've seen multiple TikToks of people celebrating his death and saying they unfollowed left-wing people who were saying this shouldn't have happened. I truly don't get how to reckon with that. It's fine, dude. Tensions are high. What do? You know? I think people need to let go of petty disagreements that they have. Anyway, I just think to myself, when like, how do so many Americans feel when they see when they are aware. Like there's a reason why like TikTok's response to Charlie Kirk from liberals and leftists alike has been very different than I think like all of the other mainstream news outlets, because that's where Charlie Kirk actually found a massive audience. But because of that, that's where Charlie Kirk was also hated severely, right? Because they know his takes. They've seen his takes, right? Those same positions that garnered a lot of attention from young conservatives all around the country were exactly the reasons why that dehumanizing language, for example, that he used all the time is the reason why a lot of people actually were very frustrated with him and maybe even despised him, right? But a lot of these people are completely oblivious to Charlie Kirk's worldview, and they are being presented a totally false image, okay? Disagreeing with you does not mean being right wing or far right. I'm Norwegian, voting left, which basically means more left than you even understand. Your takes are largely dogshit, polarizing, and borderline crazy. Hassan, thank you, goodbye. Explain what you mean. Explain what you mean. Because there's never people always say stuff like this, but they never actually follow through. They don't actually say like, this is what I disagree with you. This I think is very polarizing. And then when they do, if in the random circumstance where they do actually fucking reveal their position, it's not even my position. It's just one that another person has negatively framed that they've been duped into believing. Like the most improper, the most negative framing that you could ever hear. Something like what Will Chamberlain was advancing here. Okay? It's additionally funny for a Norwegian leftist who fancies himself to be a left voter in Norway to say this about someone like myself, because on the legislative front, a lot of the things that I advocate for is basically trying to get the United States of America to have modest social democratic reforms that reflect the Norwegian social democracy that is also withering away in front of the eyes of the Norwegian left. So, like nationalizing the entirety of our extraction industry, as is the case with Norway, for example. The entirety of the energy and the forestry in Norway is nationalized. This is great. I would like to do that here. Will Chamberlain, the guy calling for de-workwear and Mehdi Hassan to be deported because he disagrees with them, is a trust fund kid who assumed control over a significant amount of money at 25, failed to fulfill his dream as a financier, and now works for the most shameful culture war factory slop job, and was chilling with Andrew Tate and a bunch of other groypers, as a matter of fact. Interesting. That was the guy who was like, you interviewed a Houthi, wait until we destroy you. My dad just openly posted saying they're done with passive action and that myself and others need to be dealt with. So fucking heartbreaking. Okay, this is a great example, right? You're hearing this from a lot of conservatives. They're very, very angry right now. They're very agitated. They're always agitated. Agitation is a part of their politics in general. That's what it is to be a reactionary, right? But like, what's he gonna do? That's your dad. Is he gonna do anything? Probably not. Expand on that assessment and you will arrive at a more comfortable, just the more likely outcome of all of this. Yeah. I'm hearing a lot of messages like this one. You killed the one man that was willing to come to you peacefully and debate. The talking is over. Like everybody out here, everybody's basically operating like they're fucking anime villains. Everybody is like Sephiroth posting on the timeline. Like, oh, it's time. Your time is going to come. This is like, it reminds me of like the 2016 era, Antifa, what's his name? Grimmy, whatever, the Philadelphia logo, like, young college freshmen who first were learning about like Marxist Leninism, gritty posting. It reminds me of that. Of course, the difference is like young college freshmen who have never shot a gun are not as serious about doing this kind of decentralized violence as divorced dads with an arsenal of weapons and a willingness to go out and do this kind of violence. So it's a little bit more serious when MAGA family annihilators actually make these sorts of threats. It still hopefully will not amount to anything super consequential. I hope. That is my hope. Anyway, we are living in Eddington for sure. The issue on the people on the left is people on the left who are saying him being killed is a good thing. Brother, wake up. Do you not see what's going on here? How do you not understand that this is the exact same thing, but on the other side? And this side actually has the ears of the administration who is saying similar things, at least on the point of political persecution against political dissidents. Okay? A bunch of random TikTokers and a bunch of random people being like, I hated this guy, I'm celebrating his death, is not the same as like an administration that is going to now use as an opportunity to literally engage in political persecution and maybe even more. Okay? As a matter of fact, the people cheering on the left are doing so because of their lack of power. It's a recognition of not having any power to change anything at all, any of the structural inequities. Do you understand? That's who cheers for this kind of thing. People who have completely lost hope that any sort of real, tangible, material improvements will happen for them. This is what I mean when I say the social contract has exploded in front of our eyes. Do you get it? The social contract is gone. People do not feel like they can ever own a home. The American dream is not happening for anybody. And that causes a lot of enmity, that causes a lot of anger, that causes a lot of resentment. And in that resentment, there are those on the right who redirect their anger and animosity, led by, shepherded by even the likes of Charlie Kirk and, you know, the Trump administration in general, towards marginalized groups. And the people on the left look to these structural inefficiencies, recognize their inability to change them, and then basically sit around and celebrate when stuff like this happens. Okay? But to say that the deck is not stacked against the left and liberals in general as well in a situation like this is so fucking stupid. You are denying abject reality that is right in front of your eyes. Okay? You're getting mad at a bunch of people that you have presented in your mind as like the real enemy here on the left for doing something that Republicans have never stopped doing, okay? Never, ever, ever. They're doing it right now. They're doing it right now. Do you understand? Like, you're over here saying, well, you know, it's because the real issue is a bunch of leftists are celebrating the death of Charlie Kirk. Okay, well, there's a bunch of right-wingers here saying, like, we have to start killing these leftists. That's why I said all these, like, prominent right-wing figures online, key search George Floyd, key search Hassan Piker on their fucking accounts, key search, keyword search any high-profile Democrat that has been assassinated, for example, to get a better understanding of what their opinions are. Keyword search trans. If you want to understand like what their positions are when it comes to political violence and how much appetite they have for political violence, you will realize that like the only reason why they're saying this right now is because they're saying this right. Oh yeah, Paul Pelosi, Pelosi's husband. There are a lot of this use flying around here. Look, they lectured us about the dangers of the right. Then they cheered when Charlie Kirk died. It's a sickness. This you. Congrats, George Floyd, 5 years sober. A victim of police violence. Like, ridiculous. This is abject cruelty. It is utterly ridiculous. And it's so ridiculous because like they say this is comedy. When you turn around and get mad about this kind of statement, they say, what's wrong? I'm just doing comedy. Okay? But if you do the same, they go, you need to be murdered. You need to be prosecuted at the very least or murdered. Comedy is legal now, right? Remember, here's another example. Yeah. Have some class and respect for the dead. Imagine if it was your father that was shot while the whole media is making fun of it. Bye-bye, Gaza, he says. Again, so many examples. Yeah. Congratulations to George Floyd on being 5 years sober today. That's comedy. Charlie Kirk's death will not be in vain. I'll be spending my night making everyone I find online who celebrates his death famous. So prepare to have your whole future professional aspirations ruined if you're sick enough to celebrate his death. I'm going to make you wish you never opened your mouth. These people need to be condemned in society, and there must never be a place for these people to gather without facing the shame of their behavior. That's it. Charlie Kirk said black people were better off in slavery and subjugation before the 1940s. It was bad and it was evil, but they committed less crimes.
Thousands.
Yeah, he did.
This shows they were actually better in the 1940s. It was bad, it was evil, but what happened? Something changed. They committed less crimes.
Maybe they were afraid. I mean, 4,000 black men, women, and children were killed in violent lynch mobs.
That's your explanation, but I guess
racial terror permeated American culture for hundreds of years.
Black America is worse than it has been
that affected
in the last 80 years.
The generational psyche of an entire group of people?
No, I'm sure it did. I'm not discounting that. I'm just this shows they were actually better in the
somewhat decent statements from a lib. There are violent extremists on the left, but they are not in charge of the party. You can find them on social media, not in the halls of power. The violent extremists on the right are in Congress, on courts, sitting in the Oval Office. Every single major Democratic politician condemned the murder of Charlie Kirk. Meanwhile, before even knowing who the shooter was, the Republican president gave a speech calling for violence against the Democrats. There are mass thugs running through the streets, dragging people out at cars at gunpoint. There was an attempted violent coup at the Capitol building brought on by the president himself and Charlie Kirk too, by the way. Make no mistake. That's another part of the thing. That's another part of this puzzle that's like so interesting. Liberals who only care about January 6th, I guess, forgot Charlie Kirk literally paid for buses. Charlie Kirk bussed people to the Capitol. Turning Point USA bussed people to the Capitol to participate in the insurrection. So it's even shit that they care about that they seemingly don't care about, right? Like, even if it's someone like Ezra Klein maybe doesn't give a shit about all of the dehumanizing language that has come from many conservative figureheads, including Charlie Kirk, right? Including but not limited to Charlie Kirk. Maybe you don't care about it. Maybe you think like, well, that's just like political disagreements. It's fine, right? But you care about January 6th. That's like a thing that you care about. That's what you talk about all the time. Dehumanizing language says brother, I have said over and over again that I am a firm and committed advocate for universal health care and universality in general in all of my legislative items, including but not limited to Nazis as well. If you cannot comprehend that, I don't know what else to tell you, okay? Always and forever. It's just that you don't know that. You don't understand that. You don't care to understand that. You've been primed into thinking that I'm this like evil person, and it's fine. But if you were to actually expand, if you were to actually watch a clip that you saw out of context and, watch the next 20, 30, 40 seconds of it, you would probably get a better understanding of what I truly believe. Some years of lead video to prepare the Americans for what's coming could be appropriate. Yes. Anyway, hell, he threatened to invade an American city 4 days ago. I'm genuinely sad the man died, not because I agreed with a word he said, but because he was a misguided person who himself was caught up in the culture of violence. He deserved to be shouted down for his backwards ideas, not murdered. The most sickening part of this whole ordeal is the excitement you see in Republicans, how quickly they move past any respect for the dead, any reflection on the environment they help foster, straight into who should be murdered next. This is actually a pretty solid assessment. Did you see Pedo Troll was kind of blaming it on you? Yes, dude. He is in a very weird environment himself. I think he's like trying to design like a reasonable liberal position for himself, where he just like actively says like the real evil in this country is not the Trump administration or reactionary conservatism, but instead is Hasanabi Piker and others like him. It's the Twitter leftists that he thinks are the primary villains here. Pedo Troll doesn't really narrow it down. Pedo Troll is the former username of my former podcast co-host Ethan Klein. Okay, he was outed as having a early Reddit account where he would just like engage in what he said was pedophilic trolls. He called himself that. They don't even know who the shooter is, yet they're ignoring the obvious marks of a professional killer who clearly had high-trained military background and the fact that these guys tend to be right-wing nut jobs with an obscure axe to grind. But they've already given him, and we all know it's a him, not a her, an identity, the faceless embodiment of everything they hate, and fear with a clearly coordinated messaging campaign to call him a leftist. So it's clear that what they want is not peace. They want a justification for more violence. They want a bloody shirt they can point to and say, see, this is why there are thugs in the streets in mass pulling people from cars at gunpoint. This is why we must end the American experiment in democracy. And the most pathetic part of it all is that none of it is necessary. Violent crime is down everywhere. This is all invented. And it was done so to protect the pursuit of power of one man, a dim-witted child rapist who became a violent extremist simply because selling his dark vision of America was the only way his corrupt, soulless ass could stay out of jail. Great take from Michael Gillette, by the way. It's true. Everything he said here is true. While I have ideological disagreements with liberals, like, this is correct. This is one of those instances where it's just fucking correct. It's objectively correct. That's it. Like, what are we doing? What are we doing? I think it is the most important thing to be honest in this moment, to be honest about your assessment, to be clear about your morality, but to be honest about your assessment of where we are, okay? Where we are right now in this day and age in the political discourse environment that we exist in, okay? This isn't just Trump, though. It's the entire right-wing movement. Yes, Trump is a beacon of modern reactionary attitudes. He is just a singular force that summarizes everything. Hannity, the left has given us 10 nonstop years of rage and hatred and a vile language. It is undeniable. It is poisoning the minds of many people in our country. I said all of modern conservatism is about making up a false reality to get mad at and then getting endlessly mad about said false reality. That's it. Wow, the left is really violent in their rhetoric. Why? Because they say conservatives who dehumanize entire swaths of the population are being brutal and ruthless and violent in their words. That's the real violence. Everything always goes back to liberalism. Everyone is a liberal. Sean Hannity is behaving as a liberal here when he says words are violence, except when it's directed against me, as opposed to the violent rhetoric that I traffic in on a nightly basis. Okay. And the summarization of this is basically, it's not the racist thing that I said that is actually fucked up. You calling me racist for the racist things that I said, that's the real problem. That's it. This is the guy who said you should be blackbagged is deleting his post apparently and blocking people who called him out. I mean, that's not surprising. This is the same principle that I have maintained for years. At the peak of campus culture, cancel culture, and free speech panic, when everyone kept pointing the finger at the left and liberals in general for engaging in cancel culture and all these narratives, and certainly a lot of people were doing that. You know who was still the most successful group, the most successful ideological movement that was able to cancel people, were able to actually successfully burn books? It was the right. It was always the right. But they were able to market themselves as brave warriors engaging in the act of cancel culture for patriotism, a higher order, a higher priority that actually makes sense. There has never been a moment in U.S. history, all the way from the Red Scare, McCarthyist trials, all the way down to modern, contemporary American politics, where it wasn't the right that was actively canceling people, actively suppressing speech, actively silencing their opposition. Okay? That has always been the case. And we're seeing that right now. Wow, you are really delusional. There is evidence for this. You have nothing. Go look at organizations like FIRE, who dedicate, and they're right-wing organizations for the most part, who dedicate their entire fucking purpose to tracking where the cancellations are taking place and where the book bannings are taking place. Okay? I'll give you the greatest example. Conservatives say liberals want to do cancel culture. They hate free speech. But then it's the conservatives that turn around and successfully implement initiatives by claiming things are CRT, by claiming things are woke, by claiming things are DEI, and then successfully stopping the dissemination of truth in our schools. It is the conservatives that have, on the one hand, played the victim consistently, and on the other hand, actively stopped certain educational initiatives from taking place. Do you understand? Anti-woke is literally just a repackaged attempt to do censorship. That's all that is. And people don't understand that. The average person does not understand that. For conservatives, it's usually just projection. Do you not understand that? How is that confusing to you? And the more liberal institutions capitulate to this right-wing framing and right-wing grievances, oftentimes whipped up in a moral panic, the worse things are going to get. Okay?